All right, 6:01, we'll call the planning commission meeting to order. We have a quorum. Angie is an excused absence.
Noted.
All right, any public comment?
I had a gentleman call today that wants to enlarge his home occupation. He has a bakery that's been approved 8 years ago with the previous administration, and it was one of those, they call them a cottage bakery, so that you can bake foods, but you can't use like eggs or milk. They have to have a longer shelf life, and they have outgrown their basement. So he called today and he wants to put in a building. And according to our ordinance, he can go up to 25% of his living space in a detached building. I did put some criteria on it for building, because I don't want him to bring in one of these sheds and try to use it. So I just got off the phone with him. He's aware of what our ordinance says, and I will be sending him a copy of that. And Storage Unlimited, the one behind the Critters, is that Critters? What is that bar called down here?
Yeah.
Is it Critters? They're putting a solar display on their roof on one of the buildings. I'm not sure why, because it's a storage building, but yeah, I think it was the one that had the furniture in it, so maybe he's making it into a storefront. That's maybe what's going to go on there, but I don't have the right to ask him that. So other than that, there's 3 businesses that I found that did not have business permits and sent them notification. So we're taking care of that.
Did you do anything with address 531?
531. Tell me again, Dan.
That's the one down by the bowling alley. 73. It looks like some of the equipment from the old Spranger building is there. I'm just speculating, but
Okay. I can't remember if I did. If it was on my list, I did, but I don't recall right now, but I'll double check on it tomorrow.
Is there anything? There's a new business in the right by the carpet place, right around the corner here. It was American. Can't remember what.
Yeah, the chainsaw place. Right?
Pardon? Chainsaw, yeah.
Place,
They had the Husqvarna.
They're gone.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They just moved. So they were on, I want to say Ranger, but it could be Church, out near 52nd
Oh, that's
Street.
the one that
Yeah,
had the,
Rely Right.
They had the right. Okay,
And so,
we had talked about that a couple months
yes. So I told them they had to move, and I gave them plenty of time. They had about 6 months, and they did move. So.
Yeah, they've been in there a month or so.
Yep. And yeah. And if anybody's noticed where the dentist office was.
Yeah.
So the people that used to own Austin's Alignment purchased that property to store equipment.
Trucks. I noticed that.
And I had a problem with that initially, right at the get-go, and the board overruled me. And now we do have some problems there. So I will be talking to the board, because it's not a junkyard. I mean, storing equipment is not cars and trailers and buses and campers. So I will be addressing that.
That was my next one.
Okay. You did ask me to check on a couple things last week or last month. The data ordinance, you wanted me to share it with area municipalities. I shared it with Grand Rapids, Rome, Town of Port Edwards, Village of Port Edwards, and City of Nakusa. And they were all very thankful.
Did you share it with Grant?
And Grant, yes, I did.
And can I add one step?
Sure.
because Plainfield just got hit with the solar out there and stuff.
So you want me to,
Can we just share it with Plainfield as well?
for the data?
Yeah, the data and stuff. I mean, it's just kind of encompassing our whole
Nope.
area, so,
I'll share it with anybody. I also sent it to Clover.
okay,
Okay. And
thank you. I appreciate the
problem.
follow-up on that.
no problem. You also asked me to check on Extreme Party Bus, and all I get is a recording that says leave your number and they'll get back to you. So I've been
That
leaving my
wasn't-
number.
It wasn't me. I don't.
Somebody here asked.
I just asked what
Yeah,
business. if it
and,
had a business.
They do not have a business permit. However, I do know that that's where they're parking their buses. So I'll follow up on that. The other thing is going forward for our next review of our zoning ordinance. Oh, I had a party call that wanted to bring in a manufactured home. And I told them we do not allow manufactured homes on private property. And they said, well, they were told that we did. And I said, well, we don't. And I asked them where they bought it. And they said it was Design Homes. And I said, well, wait, because Design Homes is a modular home. So modular homes are built to the UDC. They're just built in a factory. So they are a house. So we do not have a definition of a modular home in our zoning ordinance. So I think we need to add that for our next.
The two definitions we have is mobile home and manufactured.
A manufactured home. So what the state did is they took the verbiage of mobile home and they made it sound nice and fancy and made it manufactured home. But they're just the same thing.
But a manufactured home or a mobile home has a title,
Yes, it is a personal property entity,
and that
like a car or a
that
truck.
changes.
or a
That's
trailer.
that's a line that
Right.
a modular home doesn't have. So it's
Like a modular home would be like the Pittsville homes that are made
Yep.
in the
A
factory
Pittsville
and then
home,
brought out in
Wausau home, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
They're built to the UDC code, but they're built to, so when you build a modular home, they're approved on a blanket permit and they have to have an inspection agency on site to inspect for the UDC compliance. So I'd like to have that added to her. And a manufactured home decreases in value, where a modular home increases just like a home. And a manufactured home or mobile home has a title. And a realtor cannot list a mobile home unless it is in or on a parcel of land. They're exempt for 1 a year. That's it. So, side notes.
All right. Anything else, Laura?
No, that's it. Thank you.
We're gonna do item number 4, approval of the March 11th. minutes.
I saw nothing. If anybody else has anything, I would make a motion to approve.
All right, we got a motion by Dan to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second that motion. Yeah.
Second by Rob, all in favor? Opposed?
I'll abstain because I wasn't here, right? So
Okay.
the minutes reflect.
All right, motion passes. All right. Laurel, I'm reading the room here and we might as well, unless we have
I
a
agree.
schedule,
No, I agree.
that Skype meeting is, or Zoom meeting, Teams, whatever it is.
Yep.
We might as well move that up
Okay.
next and, let you folks do your thing and head out early if you want, so.
Really appreciate that.
No problem.
I'll get it
So
in.
we're gonna do, item number 8, solar project updates and discussion, including video conference with the solar company.
They're gonna let me know when they're there. For now, why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Yeah. Absolutely. So hi everyone, my name is Reza Talier. I'm a senior project engineer with Energy. I know we're co-located with the solar park here, but Melissa and I are actually on the battery engineering team. So there's about a 2.5 acre allocation for the batteries for this project. That's our expertise. We have Jesse Beck, who's going to actually be the engineer for this project. She's online. She wasn't able to make it out here today. That being said, I work all batteries in Wisconsin. So Kenosha had a Paris solar battery park with the same customer that went COD last year, and that was my project. So I'm coming off of that, supporting others here in the States and broadly understand, the expectations for this project. So happy to be here to talk with you all. Melissa, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Melissa Chang. I'm also engineer for Energy on the battery team. I'm currently the project engineer for a project down in Deer in Wisconsin. Yeah, similar role to Reza.
Same team.
Good to meet you.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, appreciate it.
We got some support from project management, development, and then Jesse, another engineer on our team who's working on this project primarily.
Unless I'm doing this wrong, nobody's there yet.
I see a JB. I just assume that's
They're
Jesse.
Oh, you are there.
I think I see, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Turn them up.
I will try. Sorry, I didn't see faces.
If I'm forgetting something, Melissa can help me and I'll say it to the
Okay.
group.
Can you hear us okay?
Sure can.
Okay, great. So, Josh, I submitted all the questions that
Yep.
I got from Rob to the team, and they're here to answer all the questions. So I gave each one of you a copy of the questions that Rob asked to get answers to. I don't know if you guys have those questions or if you want to have them in
I
front
have
of
a paper copy that would be easier than me reading off my phone. Thank you so much.
Do we just want them to start from the top and work their way down? Or?
Sure. It's up to you guys. Well,
Yeah. Go ahead, I guess if they want to, if they've got the information in front of them and they can hear me all right, go ahead and have that.
we're just going to start from the beginning, you guys, of the questions that was sent over. Let's start with the solar battery storage. Is that okay?
Sure.
Is that okay with you guys? Jesse, Melissa, Connor? Okay. All right.
Sounds good.
All right. Is there going to be 24-hour surveillance for each unit monitoring for heat, abnormal gas emissions, or smoke? And then will each unit be equipped with a fire suppression device?
Yes, so the units are always monitored. There's something called a battery management system on top of each of the batteries. If you break down the architecture of any modern battery product, there's the cells, might be the size of like a kid's lunch pail, like a AA battery would be. Put, a couple dozen of those together, you have a module. At that level, that's when you start to add in the voltage measurements, the temperature measurements, safety measurements on top of that. Stack up a few of those modules, you have a rack, and then put a few of those racks inside a roughly 20-foot container, you have a battery container. So there's smart computing monitoring for the system throughout. If there are issues, if the batteries are overcharged, undercharged, too high of temperature, the system will automatically just shut it off and pull it out of circulation. The plant's going to see, hey, unit number 12 is down. Let's check it out. Let's see what's going on here. But that'll happen automatically. On top of that, there's roughly, 2 to 4 employees on site, just depending on the project and what's going on with solar, what's going on at BES. They're not going to be there all the time, but there is some amount of man presence on these sites. Beyond that, because this is, we're working with Wisconsin Electric, and we have our 24/7 monitoring station as well. There's a division of responsibility between our Invenergy Generation Control Center, which is up in Chicago and also Bolingbrook now. That's our 24/7 monitoring. So they're looking at all the plants, and if alarm is high enough of an escalation, it will go to them. So they know who to call at that point and follow a protocol that we work on for the fire department following. We Energies is going to have their own version of that as well. So they have visibility into alarms that they can duplicate it over into their system as well here. There's also local alarms on site. So battery containers are going to have some expectation of like a horn and strobe. So if something's happening and it is a safety event and you're nearby, within 100 feet, you should be able to hear an alarm and see a strobe going off, give you indication, get out of the area, we'll figure out what's going on from there. bit of different questions there. Heat, abnormal gas emissions, or smoke. There's two approaches to that. Depends on the technology. Either you have the detectors inside the container themselves. Those are like your classic apartment buildings. You have a carbon monoxide monitor. You have a smoke detector. Heat detectors are a little bit unusual, but you could have those in the container as well. Or alternatively, you have mounted on cameras outside an ability to see, heat or flame fronts just throughout the entire site. So some products go in, some products go out. Same approach to alarming there. Last thing, will each unit be equipped with a fire suppression device? No, the reason there's no in situ fire suppression is no fire suppression on the market is known to stop a battery fire. Once a battery fire is started, it's going to continue until it's completely done itself out. So it's been there years ago. The fire code has dropped it as a requirement. It's dropped it as it's more of a liability than an asset these days. So we don't include them in the container. We do have a water tank on site, kind of skipping ahead to questions, seeing that as a resource for the fire department to use, and that's for cooling down adjacent containers. But no amount of water or suppression in the can is really going to stop a battery fire, so we don't have them inside the containers themselves.
So how's a battery fire contained? I mean, you're not
Yeah.
gonna put it out, so how do you actually contain it? Is there a container around the battery?
Yeah, it's a box inside a box inside another box. So
Okay.
the cell is a very small component. It's a big metal box outside of that, and modern battery fire codes and batteries we putting on these sites have to be burn tested, which means you take an entire 20-foot container, burn it, set it on fire, and see what containers, if it's container A, what are containers B, C, and D all around it going to do? Are they going to catch on fire? No, they have to demonstrate that.
Josh, do you want to save up all the questions until the end, or do you want to ask them as we go along?
Would it be easier for you to answer questions as we
I
move?
will please do. I do that for every presentation.
I think so, just so we can stay on subject of each
Okay.
question, yeah.
So who's monitoring this? Is this automatically monitored by a computer, AI, or people?
AI, I don't think so. AI is a specialty thing. These are, sensors. They'll see
Okay.
temperature too high, above 80 degrees Celsius, trigger alarm. It's basic. It's not AI.
Okay.
People as well. There are, there's thousands of data points being collected from these battery containers. They are going to go into various systems. Some are local to the site, and then some are going to be sent out to, Chicago or to We Energies. So there's the We Energies layer. There's the, call it Chicago layer. That's our 24/7. So there's someone there who will see, in that facility working all hours of the day. An alarm is escalated at the Saratoga Best site. Here's the numbers we need to call. Here's what information we need to convey as first responders get to site. Additionally, just like apartment buildings, there's what's called the NFPA 72 alarm code. Same thing we use for apartment buildings. You can think of the 56 or so battery containers like their own apartment. If a heat detector were going off in one, you would see this is unit number 12 or 13A if there's 4 of them per. That's having an alarm issue here. You'll hear a horn and strobe indicating stay away from this area. The first responders are going to have a station safely away, but close enough within hundreds of feet of the battery to actually see what alarms are going on. And it's the same type of panel you see in an apartment building. If you walk in, look to your left, and you see what's called a master fire panel. It's the same idea. So there's that layer. There's what's on top of the batteries themselves. That's just kind of standard, logic. Temperature too high, voltage too low, raise alarm. And then there's the 24/7 monitoring component as well.
Now, you said if the temperature gets too high or it detects a fire, it's going to automatically shut that unit down.
Yes, it does something what's called opening the contactors. So the actual
Okay.
batteries are plugged in.
The actuator, okay.
Move that off. That's how they're supposed to operate.
I've got a question. How often are your sensors tested? Your fire panels are tested monthly, usually in certain situations.
Yeah, so we have to, we work with the inspector. We have to generate a plan for each of our projects. I can't remember what each of the frequencies is. It's quarterly versus, twice a year. It depends on the detector, but the O&M is working there basically constantly. So they do have to be tested. Same as apartment buildings. It's the exact same code, just applied for these outdoor containers.
So now, you had said in the beginning, 2 to 4 people monitoring.
Those are employees. They're not necessarily like staring at the batteries. They're just working around site.
Okay, and you said they're not there all the time. So would we expect to see people there weekly?
I think they work. I don't know the exact. Maybe the PM those or from other sites, I can easily get the answer to you when our frequency is at Paris, for example. Henry, thank you.
This is Henry on the project management team. The O&M team is local to this project and they're specific to this site. So they'll be out there every working day and on call for anything outside of working hours. And so a daily presence of our team on site.
And that's not just during construction, or is that?
Construction's going to have a lot more people. Yep, sorry, Henry.
That's correct. Construction will have a separate crew who will be there every day. Paul McGowan, who some of you may have met, he's going to be a regular presence through construction. Yeah, there's a separate operations and maintenance team. If we say O&M, that's what we're referring to, and they'll be out there every day, and those people will be they'll be living in the community. They'll be people that you'll see around town as well as at the project every day during the operations period.
Okay, thank you.
I do have one more question.
Yes.
You said there was water on site. Are you going to be putting in or requesting a high capacity well for the site, or are you containing the water in?
There's a tank I think we're having it's primarily for exposures for vegetation fires, but it's the same water, resource that we can be using here as well.
Can I ask why you chose a tank over a high capacity well, being that the water is very close to the surface? I mean, a tank is not going to hold all the amount of water that would be needed to fight any type of a fire around here.
Evelyn, is in the developer's agreement?
They have the opportunity to do that, but they don't have to do that.
Yeah, Andrew Nurse isn't here right now, and he has that answer. I'll find that out and I'll get back to you. But I think it's a part of our plan, but I'd like to be certain before I confirm that with you.
Okay. I know that the first solar array asked for a high capacity well the first time just to hold the dust down. And then after it was initiated, they were going to pull it, but then the fire department came in and said, hey, that's not a bad thing to have for us to help fight a fire if we would have that on site. So they left the high capacity well there. And we didn't have a problem with that.
We actually encouraged it.
Yeah, we did. Versus how much it's going to cost you to bury a tank, the size of tank that you would need to bury.
No, that's a good question.
So yeah, take that back to whoever you need to.
And I'm sorry, we jumped ahead.
Understood. Absolutely. Thank you.
So are we on water or are we on?
Well, he went to that. That's why I went to that.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that, or we want
Wherever you want to go here, whatever's easier.
You're talking about number 4?
to? I don't know. Do you want to? Or?
Sure. The word,
Because I know, because I've talked to the fire chief who worked with the first solar, and they have special nozzles that they use for their fire equipment to spray between these containers. And to get the distance they need and the adequate heat control, it's 1.4 million gallons every 14 hours.
1.4 million gallons for every. Are they talking about just thermal management of?
Yes.
It's just thermal management.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's where the high capacity well come in, because it's indefinite amount of water. Because once the tank gets dry, the problem the fire department had is that they would have it would take 6 pumper trucks to man that station for just 2 of those nozzles continuously for how many days it would take to cool.
We already have the nozzles.
So
Right.
they have the nozzles, they did a test, and that's how much water it would use. So a tank above ground that's going to freeze in the winter is going to be absolutely of no use, and it's not going to last long. So we're going to have now we're back to trucks, and they're borrowing trucks from other municipalities, which was a problem. So that's why we went and discussed the high capacity well. And along with that, we discussed having a water transportation system, hydrants or underground water pipes that would run out to a hydrant near each one of these rows so that the fire department doesn't have to run hoses from we're trying to eliminate the emergency responders being exposed to any gases or anything like that.
I understood on that.
That was kind of one thing that we discussed. And that goes back, these questions, most of them are derived from a meeting that we had with several local townships who are gonna have or proposed projects coming, solar projects coming in, and we ran into some of these questions.
Sure.
And so it was a dialogue of the fire chiefs of the communities, and there was 4 different fire departments there, along with all the supervisors from each town, and we all discussed what we thought would be helpful with each other. And this was one of them, is that the water was pretty concerning, that's something that has to be addressed. So that's where these questions derived from. These weren't just pulled out of the sky by it was a big group of people, and we had a meeting, and that's where a lot of this came from. So
No, I completely get it. I know, so NFPA 855 is the guiding fire code for battery energy storage systems. It's in its 2026 edition from 2023 from 2020, where it started 6 years ago. There's a 2029 edition already in planning phases. So they have multiple 20-ish task groups associated with that. One of them is actual like water tank sizing. What is appropriate for battery fires? Prevailing codes don't really address batteries. It's kind of been a guessing game of how much water is really needed. The 1.4 million gallon per minute flow rate.
That's in 14 hours. That was in 14 hours. And they actually performed this test with the trucks and with the hoses and how much pressure they would need to supply these sprayers. They actually physically did this test.
Okay.
They didn't do it on site. They had to do it next to the site as close as they could. They timed how long it took to get the trucks back and forth. So that number is off of. I mean, we can double check that with Mike Hartje, the fire chief from Nakusa, but they actually performed a test there.
No, I don't doubt the test. I think the question comes down to, how much water is needed to thermally manage a battery fire. That's really the fundamental question that we're trying to answer too. I know I've seen a large scale fire test back in late 2021. That was, slightly smaller battery cabinets, maybe a third of the size of these two, but it was a very quick, these were the neighboring containers that we're trying to quickly see. Basically, with its battery burned for about 6 hours, and he said, all right, the flame is clearly petering out at this point. It's running out of fuel. It's on the downturn. We were able to spray down the doors in order to, access and see what's going on, see what the damage was. And the units, A and C next to B that was on fire ended up being fine, but it wasn't a long deluge of water to bring things under control, which is where some of my, understanding of how much water do we really need comes into play. But understanding that, that if you wanted to do a deluge of a certain, distance and pressure and, for how long you need to do that, the quantity is going to add up quickly. At our other projects, we do kind of what you described, that tanker task force where you're shoveling water back and forth. And what our experts and fire protection engineers say is that's been adequate for managing. Just you're basically spraying occasionally to manage the thermal heat across these containers because they're really insulated metal containers. That's what their proposal's been. But these are the types of things that we talk about with the fire department. Once we have this technology in mind, we can actually go through the large scale fire testing results and say how much water do we realistically need here? Because no doubt, if we're expecting to just provide a 14-minute steady spray of just pure water at a certain distance, it's going to add up quickly. The question is, do we need that much? So that's where I would counter, but I'd be happy to see the reports, or if you have the names or anyone you can connect me to on what that testing was. Yeah. I'd love to see that.
That is right from his.
Well,
I completely agree. I think I answered different questions.
I don't know if this test that was performed is the exact model and manufacturer of the ones that you're putting in.
Of course, it's
the distances between them have a big matters a lot. I mean, if they're 10 foot apart, they're going to stay cooler than if you put them 5 foot apart. So there's so many variables in this test that you have. A continuous supply of water is just, you can't deny that that's the best way to take care of it regardless. It can be a dry system. It doesn't have to have water in the system all the time. So as far as freezing and stuff like that, isn't an issue, so. It keeps people out of the area.
I
Trucks
understand.
and everything, so, that's where that come from, where we come up with that, so.
No, I agree, and I'd like to see that, and I know the folks on the NFPA task group. I'd love to talk with them too and get their opinions, and talk to our consultants too about what they're seeing here, because that's ultimately what we base our emergency response plans around.
Well, I think a caveat to our community specifically is when you look at the fire protection task force, we are literally the highest fire level in Wisconsin for this area in our community. So just any kind of heat, flames, sparks of any sort is an extreme issue for us here.
Just for the surrounding vegetation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
This
Pine
area
trees.
is,
right, I saw the trees. We looked at the site here a little bit earlier. So the fire code requires, eventually it's going to be gravel. Like there's not going to be vegetation where the batteries are. And then there's a good bit of distance and roads and separation between the actual battery containers and then the outside part of the yard. That's required by the fire code. We have to clear the vegetation to limit that. On top of that, we have the tank here for this project, which I wouldn't say is necessarily typical for strictly BES projects. There's maybe other reasons here. We have to look at the well, like you mentioned earlier, but we're aware of that. I think the primary means of the fence is separation. There's quite a bit of distance between these battery containers and the edge of the fence, required by code, and we're not supposed to have vegetation between there. It's going to be gravel and dirt and rock.
I do have the map here that shows that our community's in a very high risk southwestern corner of town of.
No, I believe
township. Okay.
Okay, should we proceed with the next question? Maybe it would be better if we left all the questions to the end, because it's going to get really long if we keep interrupting them. We can just write our questions down and then it's
for however long you need me.
Well,
you.
and while I agree with that, I like to stay on one
Okay.
subject.
well, you're the boss.
Yeah.
I just
Oh, boy.
out of order.
I do have a question. The tank that you spoke of, potential, right? That's what the plan is.
Yeah,
Do you know how big a tank that is?
that's a 10,000 gallon tank.
So and you had said that constant spraying wouldn't be necessary, from
I think that's whether
from
it's
testing that was done.
Yeah, and that's where I'd bring in my fire protection engineer to validate that. They're the ones who burn batteries for a living and understand. The testing I saw in Ohio back in 2021, they needed just to basically get this to a point where it's petering down or it's safe enough for their folks in PPE to approach. That was a quick spray. That was not a long deluge of water to maintain things here. I think that's the difference, is how much water is truly needed. Obviously, more options, more strategies here.
Okay.
But where we draw that line is something we're gonna have to talk about with the fire department, especially.
Right. And the reason I asked that, and then another reason why we would encourage a high capacity well, is because if we were to have to spray for a long period of time to cool down the surrounding batteries, according to the numbers that you had given for those nozzles from the fire department, we're looking at a 10,000 gallon tank. We're looking at about 8 minutes of water at 1,500 gallons a minute.
Oh, I understand.
So-
It's whether that's continuous or sprays here and there for monitoring. And what I do know is, again, the large scale fire testing I talked about, take containers, 4 containers next to each other, burn one, see what happens to the others. None of the other 3 showed, in the testing I saw, that batteries didn't go above 30 degrees Celsius, which is phenomenal, right? 150 degrees Celsius is maybe where they start to fail. So for one, these are heavily insulated containers. We're not expecting the heat, even inches apart, to really make a difference. And that's just one fraction of the plant. The others are, like we said, distance, 10 feet, 15 feet is what we expect. Every, heat goes, every time you double the heat, every time you double the distance, you cut the heat down by 4. That's the squared law, just the physics behind it here too. So more distance, better. So we've cordoned off the plant to prevent fire from skipping from one unit to another. So that's kind of the baseline. The question then becomes, okay, if we really want to be safe on top of that, how much water do we realistically need? But I absolutely agree. Like 10,000 gallons at a sufficient flow rate pressure, it's going to, it's not going to last, longer than 8 minutes, like you calculated there. I believe you there. The question is, how much of that do we really need, or is it really just a spray occasionally? Is this really just to knock down smoke? That's kind of what we've seen, and what we need to demonstrate and talk to the fire department and show the latest research and bring back to the code committee here as well. Absolutely agree.
Right. Thanks, that's all I have on. Anybody else have anything on water?
The more the better
Right.
on site. I just, and in the delivery system, instead of, having to have our fire department and our first responders run hoses to the far end. Plastic, high pressure water line is pretty cheap compared to our community and our first responders' lives. That's my, and hydrants aren't that expensive. It's just important that we make sure that it's as safe as it can be for them.
I understand, and those are the predominant conversations we have with fire service. Just a little bit early, but we'll discuss the high pressure well. I'm sure they're aware. There's a high capacity well.
Okay. All right, so 1 and 4 are taken care of from what I can see.
Mhm.
You just mentioned high capacity well. Item number 5 is, if there is a high capacity well, will there be a backup generator to run it?
So we have backup generators at our sites in different capacities here. So the plan is primary power comes from our substation. So where the batteries interface with the grid, because the batteries themselves take a good bit of energy. They're a decent bit of energy, especially more than the solar plant, because there's HVAC units going off. There's liquid cooling, all the monitoring and alarms need power themselves. So the plant consumes power here too. So we have that primary power. Secondarily, I'm forgetting the local utility servicing Saratoga here, but we typically have a distribution line backup power. So that keeps the critical loads for the plant operating. We're way too early for me to look at a one line and say where a generator to a high capacity well could be, and if that could be included on the circuit, that could be an option. And then our third layer of the fence that is, kind of wheel in as needed is, mobile generators. So we'll have hookups for that. We have those for the battery project. So depending on the high capacity well design, and, I need to talk to an EE here on exactly what is feasible, but if it takes power, we're not strangers to wheeling in diesel generators where needed. We've done those permanently in our Arizona projects due to air pollution laws in the state. Here we have a temporarily wheel in as needed, but that's been an option. So we have backup power for the sites. Is the short answer.
All right. Yep, let's go back up to number 2. Will there be 2 entrance and exit access roads built to accommodate emergency vehicles?
That's our standard. Yeah. So once we get to 30% design, we have a meeting with fire service usually to say, all right, here's our planned access loop for the roads. It helps that these are co-located with solar. Sometimes, option B can, I have to look at the site plan here to see if we can leverage some of the solar for them to get through, but there's always a primary entrance and then a backup option, because they have their first responder station, basically that master fire panel I talked about, like an apartment building, usually couple hundred feet or 100-ish feet away from the battery container, safe enough away. Except if, there's prevailing winds and it's a really bad day and it's blowing straight there, we want them to access from the location. And that's where that secondary entrance comes into play. So at about 30% engineering, work that out with the fire department. But we have that at the Paris Solar Battery Park in Kenosha. So I'm expecting it here.
You mentioned site plan. Is there going to be one available at any time for us to look at?
Yeah.
Exactly where this is located and the dimensions and whatever's.
So once we get through engineering, you'll actually have the dimensions of the battery section beyond what was filed publicly with the state. And then the secondary answer is what's been publicly filed with the state. Sage, she's not on the call, but we can get you links to that to that, where the solar is going to be and where the 2.2 acres are planned for the battery containers. If you want to know, like,
the access roads and the batteries.
that's going to come with the actual engineered design, which we're not at that stage yet.
Okay.
We're too early for that yet, but
Okay.
that gets shared with the fire service
All right.
at 30% throughout the project.
Rob, if you want, I do have a outline of the project boundaries. I don't
Yeah, I
know.
have it too.
Okay.
Yeah. It
he
shows,
wants
it shows the batteries are and stuff.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, any questions on, question 2? Okay, moving on to 3. Will there be windsock or wind detection system in place and accessible for emergency responders safety?
Yes. Windsock. We typically put it on the first responder station. We can do it. I can't remember it's easy enough to add it where we need. So whether it makes sense to add an O&M building, control enclosure, first responder station gated area where they access, we'll have a windsock there. That's easy enough to install.
You said first responder station, that's gonna be like where
That's that master
Panels.
fire panel. It's in an outdoor enclosure. It's basically like I don't know, like a dog pen, like fence attachment to the site. They'll have a Knox box, like the fire department's able to access at any point in time, see what alarms are going on there. So that's their protocol.
Okay.
It's typically near the primary entrance.
Alright, anything else on 3? Alright, item number
7.
7. 6 was water, we pretty much
Well,
covered that, or
yeah.
is there anything else on 6?
We didn't talk about, okay, so we spray water on this, let's say, I know your test ones only burn for 6 hours. Let's say we have one that burns for 3 days. Where's that water go? If you're putting this all on gravel, first of all, we're very permeable soil here. It's all sand, 100% sand. So water travels about a foot every 24 hours here. So it travels really fast in our ground. You start spraying these, we're gonna have heavy metal contamination in the water. We're gonna have a lot of other contamination in this water, and it's gonna go right into our groundwater. You had already mentioned you're gonna put them on gravel. What catches this contamination, this water, and this contaminated water? Is it gonna run to a retention pond that's lined that we can pump out later if we need to, or are we just gonna?
If you're just talking about strictly water, there's a separate question of will the heavy metals leach in the water, especially if you're just spraying the neighboring containers and not the one that's actively on fire, which we advise. So that's going to cut down on contamination. And we have reports to back that up from San Diego Gas and Electric, the fires they've had there. There's a couple of published reports on waters and heavy metals after battery fires. I'd be happy to share here as well. As for the detention pond, Jesse, is it north of the site? And this is where the project specifics, and I vaguely understand I definitely understand our specs, but the actual project specifics, Jesse, where that detention basin is, if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's a detention basin planned on site. It's going to be north of the batteries, where the batteries are currently planned to go. But yeah, this is something that, as Russ mentioned, like as we get further into design, we'll have more details on this basin. But yeah, currently it's planned to be north of the batteries.
So we've allocated the space for the basin. Like civil design is going to have to encompass how deep it needs to be, what that retention quantity needs to be, lining, other features of that to be pumped out later. But that's typically where the water is going to go. And again, primarily, we're not expecting that water to be brushing against the on fire unit itself. It really should be directed against the clean metal of the neighboring containers.
It will catch some smoke, like you said. It'll knock down some. It'll catch.
Right.
It will catch heavy material metals.
Understood.
I've done some research and I've done research that same thing you say you've done research. I've done research also, and there is heavy metals in the water that's used afterwards. is there gonna be a bladder underneath the gravel, underneath all of the gravel, the 2.7 acres or whatever you have planned here? It was,
Yeah, the
so that the
2.2
water
to
doesn't run
2.5
down through the
acres.
gravel and get into our groundwater. How are we containing this water?
I think there's always the roughly 1% slope drainage basin that we expect. And again, primarily the strategy is using water for cooling, not for direct attacking the exposure as well. There's not a bladder underneath the gravel just everywhere. It's really the basin. It's kind of the secondary line of defense, and the first is to keep the water to the exposures mainly, not the actual incident fire.
So the water will leach into the ground.
Um,
It's inevitable, it's going to. And if there isn't a
There's standing
rubber
water.
bladder under it that runs to a retaining pond, then we could potentially have a problem here for our groundwater. I just feel strongly about that. We had talked about.
How much
making concrete.
metal are you talking?
I don't know. I don't have that. I don't have that in front of me right now. I guess I should have been more prepared. I didn't know they were going to be here in person, and I should have had some more information on that. But
I'm.
if the rest of the board's satisfied with that you think it's going to leach off and go into this pond and not get into our groundwater, and then
I'd be happy to
I'll
share
step
the
down.
reports that I have.
I live a half mile from this, and this is a high concern. That's all.
I'd like more information.
How about the battery that's burning? How much leaches from that?
So that's the box inside a box. So
Okay.
these are already,
So it's gonna contain all the metals from the battery in the container?
yeah, you're not going to be melting that. I haven't seen a steel melt into a bottle, right? You're talking about airbornes and just the smoke
Okay,
and once it's on fire.
So where's the metals coming from? That's
Well, the
supposedly
smoke.
getting into the groundwater,
Well,
It's in the lithium battery.
but the
It's
battery's
particles
contained
that
in
are
that
the
unit.
lithium battery.
Yeah, but if it's gonna smoke, and if you knock down the smoke, you're gonna take some. I don't know what the percentages are.
Okay.
I think the question becomes how much metal is part of the airborne versus what I have seen is when people, say they have a warehouse fire of batteries, they flood the entire thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're literally dragging that stuff out there with you. That's a very different story than spraying down the exposures. And that's where the difference comes into how much of a risk are we discussing? Is this even measurable after an event? What is the EPA seeing? There's task forces on that with NFPA, so we have to keep you involved and up to date there.
So you said you have some data on that?
Yeah, San Diego Gas and Electric has some data. I'll see what's publicly available. We've definitely did this in the past. This question comes up
Sure.
every project.
Thank you.
So the air in that smoke is breathable in a short distance then? If we're talking about
Yeah, so there's an entire committee on that. And we actually do what's called community risk assessment or plume analysis of burning batteries. What happens? The immediate area of effect, depending on if you're measuring carbon monoxide, hydrogen halides, are the two main compounds that you measure within a few meters of the batteries, not on fire, but burning. So they're boiling off, they're overheating. It's usually within the 5 meters. And that's why we require the fire department to wear PPE, self-contained breathing apparatus. Obviously don't get close to these containers to that point, but like our experts say, the solution to pollution is dilution. Once it escapes far enough into the open atmosphere, the immediately dangerous to life and health toxic levels dissipate, right? You just don't have enough concentration for it to be meaningful. Once the battery catches fire, a lot of that stuff just burns off, and then it looks more like an office fire.
Okay.
So it's really the plastic is kind of these chairs
Mhm.
that's going to make some black smoke.
These containers have been known to rupture.
Yeah, so if you have pressure buildup, so there's an entire 2 layers of defense on it. So please continue the question.
And you do
No,
have a question?
it was just a comment. It was just a comment.
You do have a groundwater monitoring plan that will be submitted to for our agreement. So,
And that's where I wish Sejal was.
yeah, that's okay.
And the project specifics.
I'm just telling Rob that.
That's good.
so that
I
information
saw that
as well.
So that it was in one of those pages in the ground.
Yep.
Good catch, appreciate it. Yeah, for the, the rupture declaration, every battery container is expected to have, one of two systems, either a combination of ventilation and deflagration panels. So if you don't have a buildup of combustible gas, you can't have an explosion. So get it out of there. Once it's out into the outside the container, you can't have a pressure buildup. Or designated weak points on the container that can be the doors or panels on the roof that are intended to pop if there's too much pressure buildup or something ignites inside the container. All that's to do is to keep shrapnel, keep the doors from flying, all that, right? That's the whole feature of our safety suite. Something we discussed with the first responders here as well.
So the NFPA emergency responder manual has the written response in it. I used to carry one. They have an emergency responders book for every type of fire and what kind of chemicals you're dealing with.
So yeah, we have to generate a plan for our project. I don't know a generic NFPA version. Maybe there's a code associated with 551 or I'm trying to remember exactly, but we have to generate a specialty one. That's where we get in our fire protection engineers, say what's in the ground. Here's all the studies we had to produce for the site. What are the MSDS is what you're talking about.
Well,
so,
kind of.
right.
There is an emergency responders manual for every chemical. Whether so you know if you can use a chop saw or not. You don't want to create a bigger problem.
I haven't seen that manual, but we have a collection of all the MSDS for the site. We have to have that in emergency response plans.
Okay.
Just on site.
I am interested in hearing more about potential water contamination and leaching if something was to, you said San Diego Gas and Electric has.
They had a report and EPA came for air, soil, water monitoring afterwards. So I'm happy to send that report over. It's more than just San Diego's the one I can remember off the top of my head, but there's a collection of like 10 or so fires that they have a checklist against, right? It's what you can actually measure versus what you theoretically think you should see, and depends on the approach of fighting fire as well.
If you could forward that along to the team.
Yes,
Absolutely.
that's out in public. I'm happy to share that right after this.
All right. Anything else on item 6? All right, we'll go to 7, safety. In case of fire or thermal runaway, what's the procedure for